What do you think? Let's go back to the abortion thing. What do you think about the history of Planned Parenthood? Are you familiar with it?
The history of it? No, I'm not familiar with the
Margaret
history
Sanger
of it.
was.
I know the name, but I'm not familiar with all the.
She was a eugenicist, and one of her. We can't say the name of the project she created because it uses an iteration of the N-word, which would get us in trouble on YouTube. But her idea was to go around to the black community and start propagating birth control practices to stop black people from having kids.
Let me tell you something. My mother was a victim of that. Okay? There was a big scandal back in the 50s where doctors were systematically giving women hysterectomies. And in order to cut down the black population.
That's right.
And my mother was a victim of that. And you don't find that out until, 20, 40 years later, just like the Tuskegee experiment, just like Agent Orange, the government doing all these kinds of things, and you don't find out about it until much later.
Yeah, or like Pfizer data dumps and stuff like that. They wanted to wait 75 years to give that information out. But I digress. I'm into repairing the system too, reparation, whatever you want to call it, repairing it. And I agree. I don't think throwing money at people is the way to repair the communication. I mean, obviously communication is real. Do you think school choice is legit, or you follow that at all?
School choice?
Yeah, it's instead of like people sending their kids to a public school every year that costs a certain amount of money, instead you get a voucher for that amount of money that you can spend at any school of your choice, or homeschooling if you set up a homeschooling curriculum. Does that appeal to you at all?
I'd have to look at that some more.
Also, it's very vague, and I don't know if I described it exactly right, but it's the idea that instead of being having to adhere to a public school system or private, that you would get to choose where you send your kid, and you'll have credits along with that. Because I think education and communication is the key to moving forward.
Absolutely, I agree 100%. I'm 100% pro education, and it would have to be schools that that are top notch. You would have the right to go to those schools. I mean, there was a time where I couldn't go to Harvard, where I couldn't go to Princeton because of the color of my skin. Yeah. That's why we have what we call HBCUs, right? Historically black colleges and universities. That's why the United Negro College Fund was founded and things like that. And by the way, I went to an HBCU. I went to Howard University, which was founded by General George Howard, who was a white guy.
Is that going to do it?
So I'm trying to pull up the specific story. Google's not too. Let me see if I can do this. I did have another thing pulled up I want to ask you about.
Sure.
I hope that YouTube can start to understand context of language. Well, I mean, we'll see. If the algorithm detects the word that Daryl just said and demonetizes the video, that is unacceptable.
What did I do?
No, it's okay. It's okay. Use the N-word, which N-word.
Let me ask you. We have a story from Independent. Harvard University will hold first ever black-only graduation ceremony on. This is from May 2017. Do you agree with institutions creating racially segregated?
No.
So I agree with that. And this is not coming from the right. This is coming from.
Like I said, nobody has a monopoly on stupidity.
Huh. I wanted to ask you about the abortion thing because it's big in the news, and this is a really fascinating one because one of the things we hear from a lot of people on the pro-life side is that the foundation of Planned Parenthood was eugenicists who wanted to depopulate the black population community in this country. I just pulled up the 1990 to 2006. It's a census government abortion demographic, and the interesting thing is that in 2006. For every 1,000 women, there were 14 abortions, but for every 1,000 black women, there were 50 abortions. So I look at this, and I think...
So is that tribalism or is that racism?
I think it's racism.
Both, probably.
Absolutely. I think...
Racist tribals.
I think when you look at the locations of Planned Parenthood facilities, they tend to be in black and Latino areas, not lower income areas.
Just like when you look at all the advertisements and billboards for cigarette smoking and alcohol, usually in impoverished black areas.
Yep. So I'm curious as to what your thoughts on this would be. Why is it that in 2006, for every 1,000 black women, there's 50 abortions, but for every 1,000 white women, there's 14 abortions? How do you think something like that happens?
Racism.
Sure, but is it? Are there racists who are advocating for? Are these pro-choice racists who are trying to trick black people, or how is it racist?
They're trying to cut. Okay, let me tell you what's happening here. When you were a kid, even though you're a lot younger than I am, and when I was a kid, even when your parents were kids and your grandparents were kids, the black population in this country was 12%. Native Americans, 1%. Hispanic people, around 2%. Asian people, around 3%. Whites, 86, 87%. All right? The U.S. Census is taken every decade, every 10 years. You can Google uscensus.gov and see the trends. All right? Today, black people remain just over 12%, like 12.9, 13%. All right? Native Americans remain at 1%. Asians have pretty much doubled. They're like at 5.9, almost 6%. Latino, Hispanic people have more than quadrupled, 17-something%. If you take just black people, 12%, Hispanic people, 17%, that right there is 29% non-white. That's almost a third. All right? This is happening. All right? Today, the last census was last year. I'm sorry, 2 years ago, 2020. All right? White people in this country right now are 59%. All right? In the year 2042, which is two decades from now, this will happen for the first time in our country. This country will be 50% white, 50% non-white. All right? For the first time. Between 2045 and 2050, it's going to flip. And whites will become the minority in this country. Whites are already the minority globally, but in this country, they are the majority. You guys may know the term white flight.
Yep.
Okay? White flight barely exists in our country anymore because the color of America's landscape has changed so much that anywhere you go, there's already somebody there who doesn't look like you. And so there's a large swath of the white American population that doesn't care about this happening. Hey, it's evolution. I don't care. No big deal. I don't have a problem with that. But there's also a large swath that does care about that. They feel they're getting squished out. We built this country. We wrote the Constitution. And now our identity is being squashed out with race mixing and people moving us out and so forth and so on. So they are fearing this happening. And this is a problem for them. And this is why, we're seeing a lot of these things, that you're talking about. Voting rights changing. And people, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just what voting rights in particular?
Where they're trying to rewrite the voting rights bill. And what's going to be next? The civil rights bill, right?
Well, I just asked because they're doing it everywhere, and it's the left and the right. So I'm not sure the context, right? So in a bunch of the blue areas, they've changed the voting laws dramatically. Pennsylvania, there was a lawsuit where they ruled the Republicans and Democrats made an agreement on voting changes that was ruled unconstitutional recently. So we're seeing
when you have sat on the throne of power for 400 years, as white supremacy has sat there, it's hard to get off that throne. Okay, say as some of us are musicians here, right? So if you have a number one hit, number one on the charts, you don't want to see yourself fall down to number 2 and number 3 and number 4 and then fall off the top 100. You want to stay at the top. So when you sat on the throne of power for 400 years, and I came here 400 years ago in 1619, all right? And our last president sat on the throne of power for only 4 years, and he thinks he's still there. It's hard to give up power.
But you're operating under the pretext that like what a lot of what we're seeing in modern politics from Republicans is due to them not wanting to lose white power.
Yes.
But where does that idea come from?
I'm not saying just Republicans. Because there are racist Republicans and there are plenty of racist Democrats. Okay.
Do you agree with Harvard's affirmative action plans?
What are they?
So
I believe in affirmative education. I believe everybody. I don't believe in lowering standards in order to and having quotas to get people up there and lower the standard. No, I don't believe in that at all. But I do believe in affirmative education, giving everybody an equal opportunity to get educated.
So Harvard, it's if you're Asian, you have to score I think 1,300, and if you're Black or Hispanic, you have to score lower, like 800 or 900 on your SATs or something like that. So they make it more difficult for Asians, and they make it easier for Black and Latinos. I think that's wrong. I think they should.
I just said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Don't lower the bar.
So
Always
keep
the bar up.
This is the issue I'm fighting when I say things like critical race theory should not be allowed in curriculum. Critical race praxis.
But now let's talk about what you just said. Okay. So I've sat there with neo-Nazis and KKK people, etc., and I said, how can you hate me? You don't even know me. And sitting 2 feet in front of me. Well, Mr. Davis, you have to understand one thing. Black people are prone to crime. And this is evidenced by the fact that there are more black people in prison than white people. What he is saying is 100% true. The data shows that. The statistics show there are more black people in prison than white people. So what he is saying is 100% right. But so that justifies his thinking, we need to keep black people down because the crime will grow. But because it enforces what he already believes as a KKK person or a neo-Nazi or whatever, or a white supremacist, if you just want to use a general umbrella, he is satisfied with that statistic or that data. He doesn't bother to look behind the data and find out why.
And why is it?
Why is it? Because black people tend to get imprisoned for longer sentences than white people committing the same crime. When you find a state, like let's just say the state of Maryland, a few years ago, well, more than 10 years ago, Governor Paris Glendening of the state of Maryland put a moratorium on the death penalty, as have a lot of states. Why? Because black people were being legally executed for their crimes, where white people went to prison for life or life with parole. Okay, so what he wanted to do was, we want to put a 10-year moratorium on the death penalty to study why this is happening. What the hell do you need to study? You know why it's happening. It's called racism. White people have been studying black people for 400 years. If you haven't learned anything in 400 years, you're not going to learn anything in 10 years.
I think class plays a big role in why we see the crime rates the way they are. I think people who are in poverty, you tend to see higher crime in lower income areas. It's not absolute. It's not the only reason.
Right.
But the issue with black people in prison, typically what you'll hear from the right is, I shouldn't say the right, typically you'll hear from white identitarians, is that they commit a disproportionate amount of crimes relative to other races.
We hear that all the time. But why? They don't have the opportunities. They're not being given the opportunities. Why? Because of racism. Now,
but that would be by class.
No. It's by the fact it's by color. Okay, it's by color. I know.
It's both.
Well, it may be class, but as a black man, I have experienced things that you guys will never experience. Okay, I get pulled over 10 times more than you do. All right.
Do you though?
Huh?
Do you?
I do. Yes, I do.
How do you know how many times I've been pulled over?
I don't know, but by looking at you, I can tell you I have. Okay.
I reject that outright.
Well, then let's go and compare those times. Okay. And plus, I've lived longer than you have.
You have, and you were around. To be fair, considering you were around in pre-civil rights era,
I've been pulled over just for having a white woman in my car for no other reason.
I've been pulled over and had cops plant drugs in my car. I've been pulled over completely illegally, like for no reason at all, and then had my license suspended.
How many times?
So I've been pulled over illegally in my life probably 4 or 5 times.
That's a drop of pepper in a salt shaker.
How many times have you been pulled over?
You can't even count the number.
Like more than 50?
I was saying,
yeah, absolutely. So still today,
you are almost twice as old as I am.
Mm-hmm.
You've lived through eras of pre-civil rights and all that stuff. So I can't speak to that, but I've been pulled over, and I'm not trying to say that I do. What I'm trying to say is I don't respect you telling me outright without actually listening to me or knowing anything about my family or my life or what we went through, that outright I didn't experience these things.
No, I didn't say you didn't experience these things.
Or that.
No, I said I've been pulled over more times than you have. Is what I said, and I stand.
You are older than me, though.
Doesn't matter.
I mean,
doesn't
it
matter.
does.
I'm also a lot darker than you are.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If
I had listen. I lived in a place called Potomac, Maryland, okay, which tradition is an all white or predominantly white area. It's mixed now. All right, my family was the second black family to move into our neighborhood. My father was a senior Foreign Service officer. My father was Richard Nixon's interpreter when he was Vice President of the United States. When he went to Russia, he was Vice President to Dwight Eisenhower. He went to Russia to have what's called the kitchen debate with Nikita Khrushchev, the famous kitchen debate. My father was Nixon's interpreter. My father was one of the first black Americans to speak Russian, all right, fluently. My father spoke 9 languages fluently, all right. My father was one of the first black Secret Service agents in this country, all right. And then and the Secret Service would only let him go but so high. He did such a good job interpreting Russian for Nixon. Nixon came back and told Eisenhower about him, and Nixon and Eisenhower called my dad into the White House, and Eisenhower told my dad, "You have gone as far as you can go in the Secret Service. You should take the Foreign Service exam. You can go higher there." So my dad took the Foreign Service exam and became a Foreign Service officer. But there was still a ceiling for black people in the Foreign Service. But let me just finish, okay? So in Potomac, Maryland, my dad had a Mercedes. Second black family in the area. My dad was getting pulled over in our own neighborhood. I was a teenager.
Okay? When was it? Like what year was it?
We were there in 1971 through. I still own the house there, but I have another house where I live. 1971. He died in 2018. So between that, more black people started moving in probably in the mid to late 80s. All right. The cops thought my father walked into the neighborhood and drove out. So when I turned 16, I got what all black parents give their young boys. It's called the talk. Have you heard of the talk?
I had the talk too.
Okay, you had the talk
tell
too.
me about it.
Okay, the talk is what black parents give their young boys, especially when they start driving. You know, when you get pulled over by the police, even if the cop is wrong, do not argue with them. Just take the ticket, sign it. We'll go to court. We'll settle it in court because you can get shot.
But see, this is the issue I have with. I think what you're saying is racist. The idea that black people exclusively do that, or it's predominant among black people, when that's actually a normal thing most people do.
No.
So perhaps it's a class issue because all of my friends and myself had the exact same talk in the exact same way. I was told, no matter what happens, when you're pulled over, you turn the light on, you turn the car off, keys and wallet on the dashboard, hands on the steering wheel, you roll down the window and you don't move. You answer the officer's questions. You do not argue with him. Do you understand? Yes. Say it back to me.
I'm sorry, Tim, but you were 100% wrong.
So, okay? When it's just
no.
I think it's fair to say that you're older than I am. We agree on the racism of the past, and I absolutely agree. I completely agree.
We can agree on the racism of the past, but we can also talk about the racism of today.
And I agree a lot on it. What I don't agree with is that this, it's strange to me to hear the idea of the talk. Perhaps white suburban upper class WASPs don't do that, but growing up in the south side of Chicago, in mixed race areas, in gang territory,
I'm from Chicago. Anyway,
and you're from Midway?
I'm from Chicago, 500 East 33rd, right on the south side.
Right, yeah, Midway. So I'm on 47th, 49th in Laramie. So I'm 2 blocks away from the LeClaire courts. I had the talk too. Mm-hmm. My friends all had the talk. Everyone had the talk. The talk existed among white kids, Polish kids, Mexican kids, Asian kids, and black kids. Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. But if you want to check out the full show live, tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And if you want more special access content, head over to timcast.com and become a member. Your membership helps sustain this company, keep our journalists employed, makes this show happen, and you will get access to exclusive members-only segments of the Timcast IRL podcast, and there's a massive library to check out. So again, go to timcast.com or tune in Monday through Friday at 8 p.m., and we'll see you all there.